The sun was setting behind the hills, casting a warm orange glow across the fields. Caleb wiped the sweat from his forehead and leaned on his old shovel. Another long day on the farm. He looked around. Rows of vegetables, the quiet hum of machines in the distance, and not a soul in sight for miles. Life here was simple, hard, but peaceful, just the way he liked it. Caleb had lived on this planet for 10 years. It wasn't Earth, but it was home now. The soil was good, the air clean. After the wars and the noise of the cities, all he wanted was silence and land to care for, and maybe someday, someone to share it with. But for now, it was just him, his animals, and his crops. As he walked toward his barn, something strange caught his eye. Near the fence line, just behind the big water tank, something was moving. At first, he thought it was one of his cows, but the shape was all wrong. Too thin, too low, and was that fur? Curious, Caleb walked closer. What he found made him stop in his tracks. A creature. No, not just any creature. An alien. It looked like a mix between a big cat and a person. Its body was covered in dark, dusty fur, and it wore pieces of torn armor. One of its arms was bleeding, and its chest was rising and falling fast, like it had run a long way. Its eyes were closed. It looked half dead. Caleb crouched down, keeping a safe distance. "Hey," he said softly. "Can you hear me?" No answer. The alien didn't move. He looked around. There were no other signs of life. No crash, no ship, nothing. Just this being, alone and wounded. He knew the smart thing would be to call someone. The colony authorities maybe, or just leave it. It wasn't his problem. But Caleb had seen enough in life to know what it meant when someone was left behind. He'd been a soldier once. He'd seen the look in the eyes of the forgotten. He couldn't just walk away. With a quiet sigh, he stepped forward. The alien didn't resist when he carefully lifted her. She was heavier than she looked, strong even in her weak state. Her body was hot with fever. She needed help. Now, inside the barn, he laid her on a pile of old blankets in the corner, away from the animals. He cleaned her wound as best as he could, using water and cloth. She groaned once but didn't open her eyes. He brought her food, a plate of cooked vegetables and some soft bread, and left it nearby. He wasn't sure if she could eat it, but it was all he had. All night, Caleb kept checking on her. Sometimes she shook, like from bad dreams. Other times, she whispered words in a language he didn't understand. By morning, the food was gone. That gave him hope. Later that day, while Caleb was fixing the fence outside, he heard a low growl from inside the barn. He rushed in. The alien was awake. Her eyes were wide, sharp, and golden. She stared at him with confusion and warning. Her ears twitched, and her claws were half out. She looked like a cornered animal. Caleb raised his hand slowly. "Easy now," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't speak, but her eyes scanned the room, then looked back at him. Her breathing was heavy, but not panicked. "I found you outside," he said calmly. "You were injured. I brought you in. Fed you. That's all." Still no reply. After a moment, she looked down at the empty plate beside her. Then she looked at her cleaned arm, now wrapped in cloth. She blinked once, slowly. Then, to Caleb's surprise, she nodded. Only a little, but it was enough. He gave her a small smile. "You're safe here," he said gently. "You can rest." He turned to leave her alone, to give her space. But before he stepped out of the barn, he heard a soft, raspy voice. "Thank you." He paused. When he looked back, her eyes were already closed again. But that one word, spoken in rough but clear English, stayed with him. Who was she? Why had she been left to die? And why did she, of all beings, end up here, on his quiet little farm? Caleb didn't know the answers, but something told him this wasn't just chance. Something bigger was coming. The next morning, Caleb brought a warm bowl of soup to the barn. As he stepped inside, he saw the alien sitting up for the first time. She leaned against the wall, breathing slowly, her golden eyes fixed on him the moment he entered. Her fur was still dusty and her face tired, but she looked stronger than before. Caleb set the bowl down on a small wooden crate beside her. "It's not much," he said, "but it'll help." She glanced at the soup, then at him again. Her claws were retracted now. She didn't growl this time. Instead, she studied him with quiet curiosity. Caleb didn't speak further. He simply nodded and turned to leave. Before he reached the door, the alien spoke. "My name is Ranieri," she said in a low, soft voice. Caleb paused and looked back. "Ranieri," he repeated, smiling gently. "I'm Caleb." She gave a slight nod. Then, slowly, she reached for the bowl and started to eat. It was the beginning of something neither of them could explain. Over the next few days, Ranieri remained in the barn, resting and regaining her strength. Caleb visited her every morning and evening, bringing food, water, and fresh cloth for her wounds. Sometimes she would speak. Other times she simply listened. Bit by bit, she began to open up. "I was a soldier," she told him one evening, staring at the sky through a crack in the barn roof. "I served my people with loyalty. I fought many battles." Caleb sat nearby on an old stool, his arms resting on his knees. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Ranieri didn't answer right away. She touched the bandage on her side and looked down. "We were sent to this region on a mission," she said finally. "But something went wrong. I was injured. Slowed the team down. My commander made a decision. They left me behind." Caleb felt a tightness in his chest. He didn't know what kind of being she came from, but he couldn't understand how anyone could leave a comrade to die. "I'm sorry," he said. Ranieri looked at him, her golden eyes sharp. "You're not like them," she said. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "You mean humans?" She nodded. "You're kind. You care. You help, even when it's not your fight." Caleb gave a small laugh. "Not all humans, Ranieri. But maybe I just saw someone who needed help." She looked away, but Caleb caught a slight softness in her expression. Each day, Ranieri grew stronger. Her wounds healed quickly, faster than a human's would. She began to walk short distances around the barn, and even helped Caleb repair a broken fence, moving wooden posts with surprising strength. "You're not just any soldier," Caleb said one afternoon, watching her carry a heavy metal beam like it was nothing. "I was elite," she replied calmly. "Trained for close combat, tracking, survival. But none of that helped me when they left." Caleb handed her a bottle of water. "Maybe it helped you stay alive long enough to reach my farm." She took the bottle, then looked at him. "Or maybe your kindness is what saved me." That night, Caleb sat on his porch, drinking tea and watching the stars. Ranieri joined him quietly, sitting beside him on the wooden steps. "Do you miss your home?" he asked. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, "I'm not sure I have one anymore." Caleb looked at her. In the dim light, her features looked almost human, except for the soft fur, the sharp ears, and the eyes that glowed faintly like twin suns. "I've been alone here a long time," he said. "Maybe we both needed someone." Ranieri didn't reply, but after a moment, she leaned back against the porch rail and looked up at the sky. "There's peace here," she whispered. And Caleb knew that for the first time in a long while. She felt safe. But peace never lasted forever. The next morning, while checking his weather monitor, Caleb noticed something odd. The screen flickered with strange signals, unusual energy readings just beyond the hills. "Must be a glitch," he muttered, trying to reset the system. But the signal came back, stronger this time. Later, while walking near the edge of his property, he spotted something in the distance, burn marks on the grass. Circular, large. He didn't know what it was, but a chill ran down his spine. Back at the barn, he found Ranieri sitting still, her ears alert, eyes narrowed. "You feel it too?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "They're coming," she said, "and not for peace." The wind was calm that morning, but Caleb felt uneasy. The signals on the monitor hadn't returned, yet something still felt wrong. The birds were quiet. The usual morning hum of insects and small animals had faded. Even the cows in the barnyard moved nervously. Ranieri was already outside, standing near the edge of the vegetable field. She had her back to him, her tall frame still and alert. The sunlight touched her fur, showing faded scars along her arms and shoulders. Caleb approached slowly, holding 2 cups of warm tea. "I thought you might want one," he said. Ranieri turned her head. Her sharp eyes met his, then softened. "Thank you," she said, taking the cup gently. They stood there for a while, sipping quietly. "You really think they're coming?" Caleb asked. She nodded. "Yes, I know how they move, how they track. They'll send scouts first, then soldiers, not to help, but to finish what they left undone." Caleb looked at the horizon. "So, they don't know you're alive yet?" "They will soon," Ranieri replied. "And when they do, they won't stop." Caleb didn't answer. He had never been part of any galactic wars. He was just a man who grew food, fixed fences, and watched the stars. But now his life was tied to something bigger, something dangerous. But strangely, he didn't feel regret. Over the next few days, Caleb and Ranieri worked together. They repaired tools, checked the fences, and moved important supplies to the underground cellar. Caleb also made sure the emergency power lines were working, just in case. Though danger was coming, the time they shared was peaceful. Ranieri no longer hid in the shadows of the barn. She walked freely across the land, helping wherever she could. Her body was almost fully healed, and her spirit brighter. She even smiled once. It happened when Caleb showed her how to plant potatoes. No, he laughed gently. "You can't just drop them anywhere. You gotta give them space, or they won't grow right." Ranieri looked at the uneven row she had made. Her ears twitched with frustration. "I was trained to track targets across burning deserts. I led missions in enemy zones. But this, dirt planting, defeats me." Caleb laughed again. "You'll get it. Just be patient." She looked at him, then at the small potato in her hand. Slowly, she dug the hole properly and placed it in. Then she smiled. Just a little. At night, they sat near the old barn fire pit, cooking simple meals and watching the stars. "Your people, why would they leave you?" Caleb asked one night, his voice quiet. Ranieri stared at the fire. "I followed orders, fought hard, but I questioned a command, just once. That was enough for them to label me weak, broken, disposable." Caleb frowned. "That's not weakness. That's courage." Ranieri looked at him, her golden eyes calm. "You think differently. That's why I trust you." Caleb didn't reply, but inside, he felt something strange, something warm. He hadn't expected to feel this way about anyone again. Not after losing his family years ago, but Ranieri was strong, kind in her own way, and slowly becoming part of his world. One evening, while checking the fences, Caleb spotted something strange near the outer field. Marks in the dirt, large, round, and recent. He called Ranieri over. She knelt down and touched the soil, then stood quickly. "This is fresh," she said. "Landing pads, light-class dropships, 1 or 2 at least." Caleb looked around. Did they see the house? "Maybe not yet," she said, "but they're close." Ranieri's voice was calm, but her body was tense. She was back in soldier mode. That night, they didn't sleep. Instead, Ranieri mapped out the land, marking the best places for defense. She explained how the enemy might move and where they would strike first. "You don't have to do this," Caleb said. "You can run. There are forests beyond the ridge. They might not find you there. Rhaenyra looked at him, her voice firm. I will not run. Not again. And I won't leave you behind, Caleb. Not after everything you've done. His chest tightened. He gave a small nod. Then we stand together. As the stars turned above them, and the cold wind blew across the field, the quiet farm no longer felt like just a home. It was becoming a battlefield. But it was also the place where two souls, one human, one alien, had found something rare. Not war, not pain, but trust. And neither of them would let that be taken away without a fight. The morning sky was covered in thick gray clouds. A light fog drifted over Caleb's fields, making everything feel quiet, too quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Rhaenyra stood on the porch beside Caleb, her eyes scanning the horizon. Her ears twitched slightly, and her fur bristled just enough to show something wasn't right. They're here, she said softly. Caleb looked up from his old binoculars. You sure? She nodded. I can smell them. Hear the vibration in the air. Their tech hums differently from yours. They're close. Caleb swallowed hard. Then we don't have much time. Together, they walked to the barn where they had set up a few traps and blocked the main door with heavy wooden boards. Rhaenyra had helped him turn basic farm tools into weapons. Nothing fancy, just sharp metal, tripwires, and old welding gear. It wasn't a real defense system, but it was all they had. Most of them will come from the east, Rhaenyra explained as she crouched over a rough map made from a sheet of metal and chalk marks. Their scouting ships land quietly, but the soldiers are not quiet. They're trained to move fast, break in, grab the target, and leave. You're the target, Caleb said, frowning. She looked at him. Yes, but they'll take you too. They don't leave witnesses. Caleb's jaw tightened. Then we stopped them here. Rhaenyra placed a paw-like hand on his arm. This isn't your fight, Caleb. He looked at her firmly. You're on my land. You helped me. I help you. That's how it works. For a moment, Rhaenyra just stared at him. Then she gave a small nod. Very well. Then we defend this place together. By noon, the first sound came. A deep, distant hum, like thunder, but too steady to be natural. Caleb grabbed his old rifle. Rhaenyra pulled what remained of her armor tighter and adjusted the blade she had shaped from broken farm metal. Through the thick trees near the field, dark shapes moved. 3 figures, tall, fast, and armored in gray-blue. Their helmets glowed slightly. They held long weapons that didn't look like guns, but something more advanced. Rhaenyra crouched low behind a hay cart. Scouts, she whispered. They'll search before calling in the strike team. Caleb was behind a nearby tractor, holding his breath. The figures passed within 20 feet of him. One paused, sniffed the air, and raised its weapon. Suddenly, a loud snap rang out. One of Caleb's tripwires triggered a heavy bucket, knocking the soldier flat. The other 2 turned fast, but Rhaenyra was faster. She leaped from behind the cart, slamming into one soldier with her shoulder, sending him flying into the fence. She spun around and kicked the last one to the ground, disarming him before he could aim. It all happened in seconds. Caleb ran forward. You okay? Rhaenyra nodded, breathing fast but steady. That was just the beginning. Not long after, a loud boom shook the ground. A drop pod landed just outside the field, sending up a wave of dirt. The hatch opened, and 5 more soldiers stepped out. This time, heavily armed and ready. They know I'm here, Rhaenyra said. Caleb looked at her. Can we win this? She didn't answer right away. Maybe not, but we'll make it cost them. They ran to the barn. Caleb lit the signal torch they had prepared. It wasn't high-tech, just smoke and light, but it could be seen from far away, just in case someone else was watching. The soldiers moved in, quick and silent. Then the fight truly began. The farm turned into a battleground. Rhaenyra moved like a shadow, her claws slashing and blades spinning. Caleb used the land to his advantage. leading one soldier into a deep irrigation ditch, blasting another with a burst of steam from the old boiler system. The invaders were trained, but they didn't expect resistance from a human farmer and a wounded alien soldier. Still, they kept coming. Behind the barn, Ranieri faced off against a tall commander. His armor was polished, and his voice was cold. "You should have died," he said. "You broke the code." "I followed my heart," Ranieri replied. "That was your weakness." Ranieri narrowed her eyes. "Then this weakness will defeat you." They fought, claws against metal, blades clashing under the cloudy sky. Caleb rushed in just in time to stop another soldier from shooting her from behind. Together, they'd brought him down. But the commander escaped, injured, but alive. As silence returned, smoke rose from the field. Several of the alien soldiers lay defeated. Caleb leaned against a wall, exhausted and bruised. Ranieri stood beside him, breathing hard, her fur marked with cuts. "They'll send more," she said. Caleb nodded. "Let them. We're not done yet." But as they looked up, more shadows passed across the sky. And this time, it wasn't just alien ships. It was something else entirely. Human ships. Smoke rose from the field, drifting over broken fences and scorched soil. Caleb wiped sweat and dust from his forehead as he checked the old rifle one more time. His hands were shaking. His shoulder ached, but he was still standing. Beside him, Ranieri crouched behind the old tractor. Her chest moved up and down quickly. Her armor was cracked, her fur dirtied with ash, but her eyes still burned with focus. They had survived the first wave. But more was coming. Across the sky, dark shapes moved. More dropships, more soldiers. Ranieri's people were not done. The commander who escaped would return with a full team, ready to destroy anything in their path. "They'll come from the west now," Ranieri said, scanning the hills. "They'll try to circle us, trap us." Caleb looked at her. "Can we hold them off again?" She didn't lie. "It will be harder this time." Caleb nodded. "Then we make it harder for them too." The two worked quickly. Caleb knew every corner of his land, the strong points, the weak spots. He and Ranieri turned it into a maze of traps and hiding spots. Sharp wires in tall grass, water lines turned into steam pipes, and tools sharpened into weapons. Ranieri moved with quiet grace. She had the instincts of a warrior, but now she was also fighting for something more than survival. She was fighting for the place that gave her hope, and for the human who had shown her kindness when no one else did. As the sun dipped low, shadows moved again. 7 armored soldiers dropped from the ship above. They landed with a crash, raising their weapons and moving toward the barn. The second battle had begun. Ranieri struck first. She leaped from a hidden spot in the tall cornfield, spinning through the air and knocking 2 soldiers off their feet. Before they could rise, she disarmed one with a swipe of her claws and kicked the other into a fence post. Caleb, hiding behind a wagon, used a shovel handle to knock a soldier off balance. Then he triggered the steam trap. A loud hiss filled the air as hot steam blasted out, forcing 2 enemies to retreat and regroup. From behind the barn, more soldiers came. This time, they were faster, smarter. One aimed at Caleb, but Ranieri dashed in front of him, knocking the attacker away just in time. "You saved me," Caleb breathed, shocked. "You saved me first," she replied quickly, then returned to the fight. The field became a storm of movement, flashes of metal, thuds of heavy boots, shouts in strange languages. But Ranieri and Caleb worked like a team. One soldier chased Caleb into the shed, thinking it was a trap. It was, but not the kind he expected. Caleb slammed the door shut and lit a rope. A second later, a small fuel barrel exploded, throwing dust and debris in the air. The soldier staggered out, defeated. Ranieri faced the same tall commander again. His armor was glowing now, and his voice was louder through his helmet. "You disappoint me, Ranieri," he said. You should have died in the field. You were never one of us. I never wanted to be like you, she said firmly. They clashed in the open yard. His blade was high-tech and sharp. Her blade was rough, made from scrap. But her spirit was stronger. They fought with speed and fury. Sparks flew with each strike. Around them, the wind howled and dust lifted into the air. Caleb wanted to help, but he knew this was her fight. Finally, with one strong move, Reinari knocked the commander's blade aside and struck his chest. The blow sent him flying back into the barn wall. His armor cracked. He didn't rise. Reinari stood over him, breathing hard. I choose who I protect now, she said. The remaining soldiers paused. They had never seen one of their own defeat a commander like that. One by one, they stepped back. Some lowered their weapons. Others turned and ran. The battlefield grew quiet again. Caleb walked over, limping a little. You did it. Reinari shook her head. We did it. They looked at the broken field around them, damaged but still standing. Then, from above, a low hum filled the air again. But this time, it was different. Reinari looked up. Those are not my people. Caleb followed her gaze. That's a human ship. 3 large crafts descended slowly, marked with the flag of the Human Colony Alliance. They hovered above the farm before landing gently near the cleared field. Soldiers stepped out, not enemies, but humans. One officer approached carefully. We received a distress flare. Is everyone all right? Caleb glanced at Reinari. We are now, he said. The human soldiers moved carefully across the farm, their boots kicking up dust on the dirt path. They weren't here to cause trouble. They were here to help. The officer who had approached Caleb and Reinari held out his hand. Lieutenant Weston, he said, we're here to assist. We saw the flare and received the reports of the alien invasion. Are you both okay? Caleb nodded, still feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. We're good. We've held our ground. Reinari, who had stayed quiet until then, stepped forward. Her posture was different, more rigid, more wary. She looked the soldiers over with sharp eyes, sizing them up. Thank you for coming, she said, but I'm not one of you. I don't belong with your people. Lieutenant Weston raised an eyebrow. Reinari, right? You fought well. We've heard reports of a rogue alien soldier. You've been abandoned by your own, correct? Reinari nodded. She was still processing everything, the weight of her past decisions sitting heavily on her shoulders. She had fought and bled for a cause that had turned its back on her. Now she stood with humans, people she had never imagined she would trust. But in these quiet moments, amidst the chaos, she had come to realize that perhaps trust wasn't about bloodlines or loyalty to a far-off cause. She looked at Caleb. He stood beside her, no weapon in hand, only the simple tools of a farmer. And yet, it was him, this human who had shown her compassion, that made all the difference. I don't belong to your army, your planet, she said softly, her golden eyes meeting Weston's. I don't even belong to my own kind. I was abandoned to die. And yet, here I am, alive, because of him. She nodded toward Caleb. The soldiers shifted, clearly uncomfortable. But Weston's face softened. We don't turn away people who need help. You're safe here, both of you. Caleb stepped forward, a slight frown on his face. We've done enough fighting for now. I think we both need a rest. The farm's in bad shape. Weston smiled. I understand. We can help with repairs and cleanup. You don't need to do everything yourself. For a moment, Reinari watched the human officer, her mind working through the words. But what do you want in return? I've fought battles. I know how this works. Weston lowered his voice. We don't ask for anything in return. It's our job to protect people. And after hearing what you did, I can see you've earned your place here, whether it's among humans or your own kind. Her gaze was firm. I wasn't given a choice before. I won't be anyone's prisoner again. Weston nodded slowly, understanding her words. You won't be. We're offering you safety, not chains. Ranieri didn't speak for a long time. She looked at the field, the barn, the broken fences. She thought about the years she had spent as a soldier, following orders, fighting for causes she never truly understood. She had been a weapon, not a person. But here, with Caleb, she had found something different, something that made her feel human again. Caleb, she said, her voice quiet. What will we do now? If I stay with humans, what will it mean for me? Caleb smiled gently. It means you can stay as you are. No one's telling you what to do. You decide. We decide. Together. For the first time in a long while, Ranieri felt a flicker of hope. She turned back to Weston. I don't need your orders, but I'll fight if it means protecting this place, this farm, these people. Weston's face brightened, and he gave a short nod. That's all we need to hear. You're one of us now. The soldiers began to move through the field, assessing the damage. Caleb joined them, picking up tools and making small talk with the officers. Ranieri stayed by the barn, watching them work but not participating yet. It was strange, being surrounded by humans she had only recently viewed as strangers. But the way they treated her, it felt different. She had been a soldier once, standing on the front lines of distant wars. But now, for the first time, she felt like she might have a place somewhere. Not as a warrior, but as something more. As the sun set over the farm, the sky turning pink and purple, Ranieri walked up to Caleb. I'm not sure what's next for me, she admitted. Caleb looked at her, his face calm. Maybe it's just about living, Ranieri. Maybe it's about being part of something bigger, something good. Not fighting for others, but living for yourself. She didn't say anything for a long time, but she smiled, just a little. I think I can do that. Caleb nodded, putting an arm around her shoulders. Then let's start fresh. We'll rebuild together. As the human soldiers worked through the night, helping Caleb repair his farm, Ranieri looked out at the horizon. It was a new beginning. She was no longer a soldier, no longer an outcast. She was simply someone who had found a place to call home. The days following the battle were peaceful, though filled with work. Caleb, Ranieri, and the human soldiers worked side by side, fixing the damage to the farm and making repairs where they could. The once quiet farm had become a place of activity. Voices in the distance, the sound of metal and wood being hammered together, and the hum of machinery being repaired. Ranieri had stayed mostly by Caleb's side, helping him rebuild, and often pausing to look at the stars above. She was no longer a soldier, no longer an outcast. She was a part of something new, something she hadn't thought was possible when she had been left to die on that distant planet. She had found something that many would call home. Purpose, safety, and peace. But the quiet peace was interrupted when Caleb approached her one evening, a puzzled look on his face. He was holding a communication device. Ranieri, he said, his voice soft but serious. There's something I think you need to see. She looked at him, then at the device in his hands. What is it? Caleb activated the device, and a holographic image flickered to life above it. The image showed a human officer, this time a higher-ranking official. Ranieri, this is General Hargrove. The officer's voice echoed through the device. I've been briefed about your actions, and we believe you've earned more than just shelter. You've earned a chance to help, a chance to make a difference. Ranieri stiffened, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. What do you mean? General Hargrove's face became more serious. You've fought with humanity's enemies and seen the truth of what they do to those they see as weak. The Alliance believes you have valuable skills, skills that can help protect others from the same fate. For a long moment, Ranieri didn't say anything. She stared at the projection, her mind racing. We've reviewed the reports from the farm, the general continued. You fought to protect a human without hesitation. You've proven that you are capable of doing something greater than following orders from a distant command. This is an offer, an opportunity for you to join our forces. to fight for something that matters. Rhaenyra stood still, her thoughts swirling. She had always been a soldier, raised to follow orders without question. But this was different. The general was asking her to be more than a weapon. They were offering her a chance to make her own choices, to protect people who needed her, rather than serving those who saw her as expendable. She turned to Caleb, her eyes searching his face. "What do you think?" she asked. Caleb gave her a small smile. "It's your choice, Rhaenyra. But you've always fought for something, haven't you? Now you have a chance to fight for the right reasons." Rhaenyra looked back at the holographic image of General Hargrove. She had always been trained to kill, to destroy. But now, she had the chance to build something, to fight for a purpose that wasn't just about survival. She took a deep breath, her voice steady but firm. "I accept. I'll fight for the Alliance, but I won't be a tool for war. I'll protect those who need it." General Hargrove nodded, clearly pleased. "We'll send a transport to your location. You'll have everything you need. We're looking forward to seeing what you can do." The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving Rhaenyra and Caleb standing in the stillness of the farm. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Rhaenyra turned to Caleb. "It's strange," she said. "I spent so much of my life following orders without ever questioning them. Now, for the first time, I'm making my own choice." Caleb nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "And that's what makes you free." The next few days were filled with preparation. The human soldiers who had helped Caleb and Rhaenyra were now busy loading their transport ship with supplies and equipment. Caleb was surprised by the speed at which they worked. The soldiers treated Rhaenyra with respect, something she hadn't expected after the battles she had fought. On the day of departure, Caleb stood by the edge of the farm, watching as the transport ship prepared for takeoff. Rhaenyra stood beside him, her armor now polished and neat, a symbol of her new path. "I'll miss you, Caleb," she said quietly. "You gave me more than I ever expected. I didn't think anyone would care." Caleb smiled softly. "You were always worth caring for, Rhaenyra. I'll be here, on the farm. And you'll be out there, making a difference. That's enough for me." Rhaenyra nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace. She had left behind the life of a soldier, but she was now part of something bigger, a force that stood for justice, not just survival. "I won't forget this place," Rhaenyra said. "I won't forget you." "You won't have to," Caleb replied. "We'll both be fighting for the same thing." The ship lifted off from the ground, rising slowly into the sky. As it disappeared into the distance, Rhaenyra felt something new inside her, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. For the first time in her life, she was fighting for something she believed in. And that was the greatest victory of all.